Before you go any further, look below and click the subscribe button. Hello, welcome to Savvy the Business Podcast. And we are on with Miss Yolanda Collins this morning. And this is going to be an interesting conversation, something a little different than what we normally talk about, but it's still a relevant conversation. So, Miss Yolanda, I came across her on LinkedIn. I think she reached out to me and we just kind of chatted a little bit. And that's how we came to the podcast. We're kind of getting on and off, rescheduling, but we're finally here. And I'm excited that we are finally here to have this discussion. So sit back, strap in, because it's going to be one of those type of conversations. So before we get started, I'm going to read a little bit of her bio, and then we're going to jump straight in.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. In July of 2021, I walked straight out of corporate. I walked straight out of corporate for many reasons: toxic, discriminatory, DEI performative rhetoric, racist HR practices, and it's one of the best decisions she's ever made. Yolanda worked on the front line for 19 months while she also served as co-chair of the Black Employee Resource Group, which landed her in the emergency room and subsequent leave of absence last May. What she knows stress and pure exhaustion from work was the culprit. While out on leave, she was not able to get the proper care and rest needed because her manager kept probing and inquiring about her diagnosis and for her estimated return to work. Of course, under the false pretense of being concerned. We all understand that. She know what it was all about. She was, like we said, the co-chair of the Black Employee Resource Group and founding member who actually penned the charter. After George Floyd's lynching, her organization scurried like many trying to be relevant. In doing so, Black employee listening tours were launched to find out what our company can do better. And if Black employees experiencing discrimination, well, that opened a Pandora's box. As many DEI and ERG practitioners post George Floyd, various people cried out and spared not, but were meant to push back, often reprimanded and told, we didn't get here overnight, so we can't fix this overnight. So, Miss Yolanda, what prompted straight out of corporate and the journey that you are on?
I am so glad you asked, Melissa. And first of all, thank you for the invite. Thank you for our meeting. It was destined, it was organic in many ways. And so I just want to, first of all, thank you. And thank you for your listeners who will tune in and will take away from this very riveting discussion today. So straight out of corporate, yes, it is one of the brands that I am boldly walking in. Was a spin out not only of this past July, but it really was a journey that started 8 years ago. I feel like that was the beginning of me really taking wings and understanding where my voice was and how I was going to show up. This is really part two to that. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so loud right now, because I'm very comfortable in this space. And so what straight out of corporate really means, it is uncut, it is unedited, it's conversation and discussion around what is happening in the workspace, particularly for Black employees. That's who I am. I'm a Black woman, Indigenous woman, African American, all those things here in America and in corporate America. And so our experiences are always heightened as it relates to whatever is happening in general. So straight out of corporate is addressing those things straight head on, unapologetic, just like the group that had the song Straight Out of Compton. It was explicit. It was addressing a conversation, much needed conversation at the time around what was happening to Black Americans across the country, but particularly in that community. So the same thing here. Mm-hmm. Straight out of corporate will address and will talk about the things that Black Americans, Black workers are facing in corporate America.
So I've, had this conversation before with some other guests that a lot of things that are happening now are not new. It's just, a huge spotlight is being put on so many things
Mhm.
after, the George Floyd incident. And,
Absolutely.
everyone is, screaming DEI. That's not new. It's not something that was just dreamt up after, George Floyd, but you saw this huge spotlight on DEI, Black employees, Black America, women in corporate America,
Mhm.
women not getting seats at the tables. I mean, we could go on and on of all these things that everybody like, oh wow, oh right, really? Let's talk about this. Let's do this. Let's fix this. It's not new.
Yeah.
So post George Floyd, why do you think that so many companies are trying to, cover up, so many are just doing it because it's a checkbox to say, hey, yeah, we did it, we had the training. And then you have some that are really trying to make those changes. What are your thoughts on corporations that's checking the box and the ones that's
Okay.
really putting an effort to say, let's get this right?
So again, we're definitely going deeper. In fact, I just finished a interview with the international outlet. Can't quite say who it is just now, but we're going to dive into some of that content
Yeah.
today because that was just a few hours earlier. But let me first step back and say it is a knee-jerk reaction. Again, straight out of corporate, we're giving it to you straight. For the most part, most corporations, it was a knee-jerk reaction. This is not anything new, especially for Black employees. This has been a part of my career working in the multicultural space, having these discussions around where Black, not only employees, but consumers fit into a corporate brand.
Hmm.
But let's go even further. You have to remember that it was our ancestors that started the civil rights movement. And in the 60s and 70s, we're pushing for equal employment. Um, so that our presence was reflected appropriately in corporate America as we were represented uh, the numbers in this country. So that fight started with our ancestors, Martin Luther King, John Lewis, and then it made its way into. You have to remember. In fact, this past Monday was the 59th anniversary of the "I Have a Dream" speech. So my question to you, Melissa, is: did you hear any company mention that?
Of course not.
Of course not.
Of course
So
not.
if you're so concerned about um, where we show up in this country, if you don't do a commercial, at least you could have done a post on LinkedIn or some of your social platforms to talk about
Mhm.
a very historic moment, again, that ushered in all of these things that we're now talking about today. So yes, it's performative. It was a knee-jerk reaction, and it was a chance for companies to give the impression that they cared and that they are concerned and that they uh, see what's happening in this country. And I have to
Right.
tell you, in straight out of corporate, there was a lot of false flagging. That there was a lot of fake statements being made. And as I went through that process, and I can stand here today and say that most of the companies are not delivering on those results. In fact, part of that interview that I just finished, I'm hearing that most of the companies are actually cutting back on their budgets as we stand here today. So they're not hiring those diversity consultants. They probably did not bring on half of the positions that they posted on LinkedIn. And if you were hired maybe a year and a half ago, if you look at the numbers now, I would probably say that maybe 50%, if not higher, are no longer with those organizations. And you heard it here first.
And you're probably right.
Mhm.
And, like you just mentioned that, who really recognized, the anniversary. And this could have been an opportunity for Walmart, the big controversy with the ice cream and
Absolutely.
all of that. Since
Absolutely.
you want to go there. So why not? be prepared to really go there and have those conversations and come back with, doing a celebration of, it's so many things that they could have done, and then partnering with so many of these Black owned companies to
Absolutely.
highlight, I have a dream, these companies are starting with their dream. That could have been a segue into celebrating, partnering with these Black businesses and putting those products on the shelves.
That is absolutely, you hit it spot on. And again, as Destiny would have it, I was a part of a conversation yesterday where Walmart was the keynote speaker, and they talked about some of the things that they're doing since George Floyd and the things that they're making. It's more from a philanthropic standpoint. So I got right in the chat again because we're straight out of corporate, so we bring it anytime we're in those platforms. And so I said, did someone reach out to you, your team, when that idea of the ice cream came up for Juneteenth,
Right.
where you sought out? Now I know it's a different business unit. Again, I know how those companies are set up. Again, I worked for one of the largest global brands for 19 years. I know what the nonprofit versus the for-profit arms look like and how they interchange. But I wanted to know if it wasn't them. I was kind of expecting to hear, no, it wasn't our team, but it was this. I don't expect to hear everything behind the scenes, but it was pretty much a blanket statement. We're sorry, we hurt you. And I believed her. But what we're expecting to hear now in this day and age is a little bit more than that. I'm done, and most Black employees are done hearing the "I'm sorry." Even outside of corporate America, when we see the tragic killings and shooting, "I'm sorry" is no longer enough. And so that response that works for you internally, but when you come outside and you're talking to people, and as you're trying to attract talent, you're going to have to bring it, and you're going to have to be transparent. You're going to have to say more than "I'm sorry." What are you doing and what's happening next? And how did you fix that situation again? And again, the 59th anniversary of I've Had a Dream would have been the perfect time to do so.
Yes, it would have. What
Yes.
advice do you have for um, employees that are still at these organizations going through the same old, they wanted to say, okay, we're going to fix, we're not going to do this. We want to make sure that we're being fair across the board. But that band-aid is not even all the way adhered to the skin, it's partially on. And the things that these companies are saying that they want to do, but they're really not doing them. They're speaking it, they're
Right.
saying it. Some have even written it down, but the action is not there. What advice would you have for some employees that they can't walk away from the jobs right now, and because of that we have to be hush hush, we have to just, okay, let me go in, do what I have to do, go home? What advice would you have for us employees on how they could start to work through some of these and possibly start trying to have some of these conversations with the leaders that are really interested and not just there to check a box?
Absolutely. So is kind of what we're hearing about now. I would say the last couple of weeks, you've been hearing this term about quiet quitting. So that kind of speaks into, you can't leave your job right now. You just can't walk out of the door. And
Yeah.
so while I don't believe in that term quiet quitting, I think it's a spin that leadership, that again, corporations, even some in the media are trying to put on uh, an um, an epidemic or another pandemic that's happening, because there is a culture shift that's happening in corporate. People are fed up, they are tired, they want to have equal pay for equal work. So there's a lot behind the spin on why they want to make it or market as if it's, or demonize people for truly standing up for themselves and speaking up when they know that there are things that are not uh, happening in the workplace as they should. And so I always say it's a toxic and an abusive environment. Again, we try to water that down. So let's call it what it is. So my advice to employees, particularly Black employees that find themselves in this position, the first thing is self. You hear a lot about wellness and making sure that you're well cared. In fact, companies are supposedly putting a lot of money into that. But I'm going to say to Black employees, go back to your source. Go back to your roots, to your family, those things, those teachings that we have very well been taught about how to thrive in uncertain times. I come from very humble beginnings, and so I know what it is to make something out of nothing. So there is a moment, and I had to do it for myself, where I literally had to take a sabbatical. I didn't go to Thanksgiving dinner that first time that I stepped out of corporate. I told my family I wasn't making the potato salad because I knew that things were shifting in my life and I had to get alone. I had to steal away. And so it is very intentional, and you have to ask yourself some really hard-hitting questions. I literally put a plan together 8 years ago, and I'm walking in that plan right now. I do want to say to many Black employees that are listening to this, it does not happen overnight, that work, that transformation. But you have to sit with yourself, you have to be still, and you have to know. You have to know when enough is enough. You have to know when it's your time. I can never tell you when that is or how that is. But you also have to also recognize and have a come to yourself moment. And then when you start to visualize and set that vision and cast that vision for yourself, and you set a timeline, you be very strategic and you write that vision down, make it plain for yourself, by yourself. And then you start to walk in it. Will you have fear? Yes, you will. And I say step and walk through that fear. But when you sit with yourself and you begin to hear those answers come back first and foremost for yourself, and you make that vision clear, it will come to pass. And so that's my first set of advice. And then so the practical piece is the next thing that I started to do is I changed my I won't even say diet, but it was my relationship with food. I started to work out. Like it was literally things that I had to work out of my body. And so with my plan and with changing some things in terms of how I wanted to become healthier, and that was also part of that process, things began to be enlightened. So in addition to what I call kind of that spiritual piece, it's the physical piece, and then again, just that practical piece of your plan. And so those are the three buckets that I would put that into in terms of your next step, that advice from a personal standpoint.
It's interesting that you said like, with exercising, which we know that is a lifestyle change. It's not some, okay, well, I'm gonna do it this week and I do it again in 2 more weeks. It's kind of like, if you're gonna do it, you have to be, dedicated to it. It's a lifestyle. So you have to make all of these adjustments. Would you say that that will be a good analogy when you're making your plan on figuring out what that lifestyle is, the same as what is your vision, what is your journey, what road do you want to travel through your career or entrepreneurship, whatever direction you're going? How are you going to get on that road and start traveling?
And so one of the other things that you're also going to do as part of your plan is you're going to list and look at, okay, who's done this before? I always say you don't build things that are sustainable alone, and you really do need a team. So as part of that plan, you also have to look at, okay, who do I want to incorporate in my team? Sometimes you're going to actually ask people to leave that team And I'm talking about family, I'm talking about friends, colleagues. You have to reimagine
Mhm.
your dream team. And so to get to that next place, or when you're putting that plan together, it will include very strategic individuals. And you have to again begin to align yourself. And you again have to be very, very, just like with your workout, very, very strategic and disciplined and consistent with how you show up with your workout, how you show up with the people that are now a
Mhm.
part of your new team. You have to be very diligent and consistent with that plan that you write down for yourself.
Wow. What do you think about people afraid to or not quite sure if they should have a mentor? So as they're going through this journey and mapping out that plan, and like you're saying, it takes a team. So
Mhm.
that support behind you. And it's more so you always gonna have that family behind you, you're gonna have them family members that's gonna support you in there. But how about you get someone that you don't know so that
Mhm.
can not just be there to agree with you and, oh yeah, I'm support you, rah rah. And not to say you shouldn't have that, but to have someone that don't know you to really
Mhm.
say, well, hold on, pump your brakes, you're moving too fast. Have you done this? Have you really looked at this? I see you want to get way over here, but I see you haven't done X, Y, Z. So what do you think about someone with mentors and not quite sure if they should have one as they're going through this, to have that person to really talk to, get advice from, and to really hear what they have to say, but on the other end, being open to, the criticism or things that they may not agree with you on.
Got it. So I'm just going to share how my journey was, and each person's can be a little bit different, but I'm going to tell you what worked for me. Honestly,
Mhm.
during the initial phase, I went inward. I didn't seek advice outward. And I think for me, part of that process was I really needed to silence all the voices. That was part of the problem. I was a part of a huge organization that
Mhm.
was like, Yolanda, you're great at this. But I said, I know, but I need to be promoted almost 2 or 3 times above this. I
Yeah.
know you want me to stay in this role because I'm good, but you're actually hindering. You're hindering me. So I was around great people, great minds. Again, a global brand. I had great colleagues and coworkers. My family was great, but I had to silence those voices
Mhm.
because this was a shift. Again, when I decided straight out of corporate, I knew that it was going to be bold, bodacious. It was going to be something that I had never done before. It was literally going to shift my life. I am now literally 2,100 miles from where I was born and raised. I'm talking about those kind of shifts.
Yeah.
Yes,
Wow.
drove across country. Um, Everything about my life, every facet of my life changed. It was a total, it was a rebirth. During that time, I was using a hashtag refresh, renew, and relaunch. That's
Mhm.
what I was doing. And so I
Mhm.
also had to create some um, affirmations for myself, not just scriptures, but really I had to speak to myself. And so I silenced voices. I wasn't looking for a mentor. I wasn't looking for someone to help me create or to shift. It was definitely an internal piece first. Now, am I against a mentor? Am I against someone that can help you craft that? Yes. But I think for this type of move, it's something you've never done before. And I had to agree to allow myself, to trust my voice. And now that I'm in the place that I imagined, that I wrote that vision down for myself, I am starting to incorporate other voices, other thought leaders, such as yourself. And I'm allowing myself to now expand. So, and for me, that was the first time in my life that I trusted myself and that I didn't have to rely on um, the direction and the leadership or the expertise of everyone else. And so that was a fundamental shift. And so that again is advice that I would give to those that are listening. Trust yourself, trust your voice. And then when you begin to move into that, that you wrote down, you literally wrote that plan, those mentors, those new voices, those new associates are going to come. Again, as they say, when the student is ready, the teacher is ready.
Who you surround yourself with really does matter. The people you associate with and spend time with have a huge impact on who you become and what you do in your life. Hi, my name is Jeff Hagee, and I want to tell you about my Inner Circle Mastermind group. This is a group that's designed to surround you with like-minded high achievers who will help you to think bigger and amplify the performance of your business and your life while tearing down all the barriers that are holding you back. A mastermind is the fastest way to get you to the next level. If you're ready to network and connect with other successful entrepreneurs and influencers, go to coachhagee.com/mastermind.
I love that. I love that. And I really love that you say, spend time with yourself, and listening to those voices, cutting out the noise. I, like that you say, it's taking that time for you before you
Mhm,
do start to stretch and do other things, sit
mhm.
with yourself for a
It
minute.
would just
Yeah.
yeah. I
I
did
love
some other drastic things again, but very practical. I got rid of cable. I
Wow! Like that's
during that
almost a
during that
necessity.
process,
Like, oh,
I
but no, I
turned
get
into
it though. I get it.
I if I gave you a list of the things that even when I wrote the plan, I said, well, how am I going to do this? It was also a decision that I was going to have to change my lifestyle.
Hmm.
Um, so that meant I wasn't going to be able to get my hair done as much. So Spirit said, cut it off. But I had been natural before, but it was when you cut it off, you don't have to worry about going to the salon, you know, getting all
Yeah.
fancy. Take those nails off. You're gonna have to save some money. So I literally did some other practical things about. So people say it's a fear. What is the number one fear when you think about if you left your corporate role right now or in your business?
Hmm.
Uh, you're thinking about those finances. So I literally said, okay, well, how are you going to do this from a financial standpoint? Get
Hmm.
rid of the fluff, Yolanda. Get rid of, um, get rid of, yeah, it was a lot of things that I wanted, those creature
Yeah.
comforts. And so again, when I had to step away from some of my associates and family and go inward, that also meant we're not going out to dinner. We're not doing that. We're not doing that.
Hmm.
It's okay if you guys continue to do that. I'm on a different journey. And all those things are fine. And I'll probably go back to doing some of those things again in the
Hmm.
future. But when I went kind of in that incubator, I really didn't have time. But I also had to make that sacrifice. And to a certain degree, I still am.
Hmm.
And so what was difficult 8 years ago, I don't even think about it anymore because I now understand the purpose. And I
Wow.
also see the fruit of that, and things are coming into fruition. So I get it, I understand it. And so you have to decide: do you still want to do what everybody else's do? You want to follow the crowd, or are you going to follow what you wrote down? You're going to follow that plan that you wrote down,
Wow.
and you have to decide.
Hmm. And I think that, and I have absolutely nothing against anybody that's out there doing vision boards or anything like that. But I think that plan of, like you said, writing it down, making a list, writing down some details,
Mhm,
um, gives you a little bit more time with yourself opposed to concentrating on clipping out some pictures and gluing them to a board.
mhm,
And again, don't nobody come for me. I have nothing against you and vision boards, but you know, it's just, taking the time, to, write down a little bit more details. Because, opposed to concentrating on a picture, you're not really thinking about self in that journey and things that you're doing because you're trying, okay, I want this picture. Let me find this picture. Your thoughts are
mhm.
more so into that. And even if you want to do that, and now that you've found that picture, what else you have to say about that picture? Instead of it just
Exactly.
being a vision of materialistic things and being successful. What is
Mhm.
your plan? What is your detail? What are your steps to get to that vision?
Exactly.
So I love that you're talking about that and saying that. And
Right.
that leads me into talking about journaling.
Mhm.
So with like the plan that you're talking about, have you a plan, write these things down. How would you say a person should incorporate their journaling to be a part of that plan, and the importance of that journaling and how the two can tie?
So if I could turn my camera, I would, but it may mess everything up. So I have, and I'm with you on the vision boards. I think they're a great idea.
Yeah.
I've never done what I call a vision board. I like to call them a manifestation or reality.
Okay.
In my mind, I'm already past a vision.
Yeah.
So for me, but I think they're important because it's, to me, a vision board is kind of a big picture.
Mhm.
And I'm in my mind, I always try to go like the next step. So I go past there. Now,
Mhm.
what I do, and I'm not a big, like every day I go into a journal, but I almost always have post-its and notes. Like this is um, on my wall. And I write um, notes to myself. I used to do this to my son as well. You could probably see I
Mhm.
put some up.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what I wrote that about. But this one was also very important to me. That'll be in a book that's going to be coming up soon. I don't know if you can see that.
Mhm.
It says
Yeah.
12121 is the last time I asked permission to take off for my birthday. But I put different things, and I've always had post-its around me um, that make me take action, that speaks to a specific incident or a situation, or again, a vision. But on a lot of my list, they actually will spell out what I have to do, because that picture or that vision board is nice. But if you don't tell your, again, and it's again a conversation you have to have with yourself, like,
Right.
how am I going to get to the next step? What does
Yeah.
that look like? So you wrote all that down and you put those fancy bullets and you're writing these feelings out. But the next step for me is you have to ask yourself, so what are you going to do about it? What
Mhm.
are you going to do about it, Yolanda? And if you can't have an answer for yourself, and you're going to ask a mentor or somebody else, it goes back to what we were saying before. You're going to ask a mentor a question that you have an answer for yourself.
Mm.
That's the problem. And and um, I have been one to always kind of trust my voice, but I did have to get to the point where I had to push myself beyond just writing those things down, or uh, desiring or envisioning something. And so I have to admit, I've gotten to the point now that I hold my own self accountable, and I give myself even timelines and deadlines to
Mhm.
get certain things done. That's why that one is very special for me. That 12121, I will never ask for permission to take my birthday. And so this year, 2022, became a reality. I didn't have to ask anyone to take my birthday off, and
Mhm.
it'll never happen again, ever. And I also want to raise my son and my niece, who are a nephew, who are close to me, and I'm sharing a lot of these principles with them because I want them to be, when they start, knowing you will
Yeah.
never have to ask for your birthday off. You will never have to deal with certain things that I did and our ancestors before, because I'm taking the time to hold myself accountable and ask myself those questions and then answer. And the answer is not vague. It's very strategic, it's very deliberate, and has a date and a time assigned to it.
Wow. Do you want to be known as the subject matter expert in your industry? Scan the QR code today to take advantage of the $200 discount for a brand assessment. The assessment will give you a summary of how your brand can step up a notch to get noticed. We have been seen in various platforms and have gained credibility and are known as the subject matter expert for digital media and branding. Sign up today for a brand assessment and a one-on-one consultation with me, Melissa Ambers. Don't get left behind. It's time for your brand to stand out. That I think is we can have a really really long conversation about this, but I think this is a perfect segue
Sure.
to leave something with the audience on holding yourself accountable, being accountable, and standing in that whatever it is. And it's not always pretty. So, what would you say to our audience on holding yourself accountable, whether you're in the mud or whether you're in the top of the mountain? What would you say to our audience?
Mhm. So a couple of things went through my mind as we talked about that, because I also go back to the whole straight out of corporate thing and how I got there. I'm going to say this, that corporate is it's a beast, and it'll eat you alive
Yes.
if you're not careful. And I want to be very truthful with, I know what you're going through. I know that
Mhm.
you're facing interesting cultures. Again, they're toxic, but I don't want you to get lost again in the mud of all of that. The biggest thing I have to say is to know your power. Don't ever lose sight of who you are and the power that you stand in, and the ancestors that were behind you. And so the other piece of that is, um, remember, take an account, reflect on, for many of us, even getting through high school and college was a journey. For us to even show up in those corporate spaces, do you know what it took to get there? This girl was from the west side of Chicago, in a community that was torn up after Dr. King marched down the street that I was born on, Independence Avenue. That's where that fight come from. I think when Dr. King marched down Independence, something must have come through that house and landed on me. But when we think about where we have really come from, we cannot lose sight of that.
Mhm.
And so we have to, again, pull ourselves together, even in these corporate spaces, and don't lose sight of who you are and where you've come from. And then you will begin to really to feel, as they say, your strength come. You're gonna feel your strength coming. And so when you do that and you gather yourself and you remember and reflect, I guess the next piece of advice would be to implement your plan and walk and execute on that plan. Um, that's very important. Those are the major highlights that I'd like to bring out. So, anything else you want me to reflect on? I really, I think I got kind of lost in my journey there for a minute, and I think I was reflecting. I literally began to reflect on where I came from as I was sharing that. So
But I
that
think that was important, in that moment, that, you were reflecting on that because that's a piece of you that's really, coming
Mhm,
across and being shared. So I think
mhm,
that, in that moment, it was definitely important for that to
mhm.
happen. So,
Yeah.
but let everyone know how they can reach you, get in touch with you, and just follow your journey on things that you're doing.
Thank you so much for asking again, and thank you for having me. The place that I'm most active, I am on social quite a bit. LinkedIn is my jam. I'm on LinkedIn every day, almost all day. There are periods when I'll go quiet because sometimes I'm going internal. But LinkedIn, I am Yolanda Renee. But I'm also known as the corporate auntie. So you're going to see a lot more of that coming out really soon. Of course, my brand is straight out of corporate. We are building some platforms around that. And so there's going to be merchandise, and there might be a book or two coming out under that brand. So, but that's the best way to find me is on LinkedIn, and you'll probably see a lot more of me on TikTok and some other social under that in all of those names. So.
Wow, excellent. Thank you so much, Yolanda, for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Melissa.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want your business in front of an international audience? Advertise with us today. Savvy the Business Podcast. Send us an email at media@savvymag.biz. That's media@savvymag.biz. Send it today. Don't get left out. Follow us on our Instagram at SavvyMagBiz and on our YouTube channel, Savvy the Business Podcast. Thank you for joining us on Savvy the Business Podcast. If you want to be a guest, send an email to media@savvymag.biz. That's media@savvymag.biz. Don't miss out on the opportunity to be heard by millions.